folks, welcome to an all-new So Bad It's Good. Listen, Maritza had an idea to do a podcast or a video about all these kind of current Vanderpump Rules stories this week, and unfortunately, we got a very bad story or update that just landed today that we're going to talk about, and we'll talk about some other stories as well. But I do want to give a massive trigger warning at the beginning of this because we will be talking about domestic violence, and I will try to talk about this as respectfully as possible. But I also am aware of how many people have been touched, by domestic violence in their life. I was just reading about this today, and domestic violence is also known as intimate partner violence. And in the United States, about 41% of women and 26% of men experience intimate partner violence in their lifetime. Younger people are more likely to experience this, with 38.6% of women and 47.1% of men first experiencing this between the ages of 18 and 24. Now, women are 5 to 8 times more likely than men to experience this. And most of these incidents are never reported to the police. Now, you guys might not know, you might know all of these statistics or this information already, but this is this is the first time that I'm actually looking at these statistics. But you, like I said at the beginning, you or somebody you know has experienced this in their lifetime or potentially will experience this in their lifetime. So it's a really important issue to discuss. And it is something that I would say at the beginning, there is such a psychological aspect to this. And obviously, the abuser has severe psychological issues that they will probably never deal with in their lifetime. But the people in these relationships, it is so mentally taxing on them. And there are so many people that stay in relationships, even though they are being abused, because they'll make excuses for their partner. They'll think this is what they signed up for. They'll think this is what love is. They'll think their partner will change. They'll think that, deep down, this person is a good person. And you can't pass judgment on people for staying even after they know of certain behaviors, because as humans, I still believe that we generally believe in people and we believe that people can change. I think we have to believe that in a lot of ways, not just for others but for ourselves as well. And now that leads us to the story, the main story that broke today. And it is involving James Kennedy. We always call him DJ James Kennedy, but we'll just be calling him James Kennedy from this point on. TMZ reported first that James Kennedy arrested for domestic violence. They reported this at 9:54 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. The TMZ article reports Vanderpump Rules star James Kennedy is in trouble with the law. We've learned that the Bravo personality has been arrested for misdemeanor domestic violence. Law enforcement sources tell TMZ Burbank, California police were dispatched to a home in the area Tuesday night after receiving a call about an argument between him and a woman. We're told a witness saw Kennedy and the woman arguing, with the reality TV star allegedly grabbing her at one point, though we're told officers did not see any visible injuries on her. It's worth noting Kennedy and his girlfriend, Allie Luber, appeared to attend a holiday party at Kathy Hilton's home the night of the arrest. After investigating the situation, police say they determined it was a domestic incident, leading to the DJ being arrested for misdemeanor domestic violence. Sources say Kennedy was released after posting a $20,000 bail. We're told the Burbank City Attorney's Office is currently reviewing the case for possible charges. Kennedy and Luber have been dating since January 2022, linking up mere weeks after the VPR star broke up with former fiancée Rachel Leviss. We've reached out to Kennedy for comment. So far, no word back. Okay, so we're going to look at this at a bunch of different angles. We're going to give the information that we know. But it is important, and it's a reminder, is that, remember, he met Allie at when he opened up for Tom Sandoval at a Tom Sandoval and the Most Extras concert pre-Scandoval. I was there that night at that Tom Sandoval and the Most Extras concert. And so they linked up that night, and we've seen their story, or what they allow of their story to be shown on screen. We do know that she had put her foot down in regards to James drinking, even though we did see him imbibe a lot of THC products on this latest season of Vanderpump Rules. And we also found out that at one point she had left him for the weekend because of his behavior, and took her cats with her, or her cat, Mr. Banks, with her. And yeah, so what I can tell you firsthand, and I spoke a little bit about this on the Patreon I did yesterday, and it was involving, because I was there at the Kathy Hilton DirecTV party on Tuesday night, and I did mention James Kennedy in my recap of that night. But you have to understand, I mean, I was just so excited to be there, and I was like trying to hang out with the Real Housewives of Salt Lake City housewives. And so one of the first people me and Justin saw when we came in was James Kennedy, when we were walking down Kathy's steps. And I was like, oh, geez, wow, it's already star-studded, or that's the thought I had in my mind. And he looked sharp. I didn't, but I've seen James Kennedy a lot throughout the years. I've seen him when he was drinking, when he was in really bad shape. I mean, this was got to be 8 or 9 years ago, before I even did this podcast, or well before I even did this podcast. I've seen him then. I've seen him sober. And I think a lot of people, and this is where it gets really tricky even for the audience, right? Is that having this attitude of thinking people can change, or, believing in somebody. It's one of those things that you wrestle with, because he has a history of this that I think is becoming clearer and clearer. We'll bring up Kristen Doty in a second, and of course Rachel Leviss in a second as well. And I think there's this thing that it's a little murky, because you don't know exactly the story. I mean, Doty is always kind of, she even talked about in her book, I believe her book's called He's Making You Crazy. Right? Is that the book? I have it somewhere here. And as alluded to that, now Kristen's experience with James is her experience to talk about, and I do believe she will talk about this. I don't know because of this situation, but I know she's always planned on talking about this specifically. And that is her story to tell. But it seems like, picking up on all the context clues, that there was violence in that relationship. And we even saw, remember, on Vanderpump Rules, the season that Sheena got married, Doty, right? That was the season that was Sheena's wedding, where James Kennedy and Doty got into a fight after the wedding, and we see Doty hit him. I think what we didn't see was that I believe he had pushed her into the bushes at some point. I don't think we saw any of this. And all, everything that I say, this is alleged. This is stuff we see on the TV. This is stuff we read. So we do know that. And also, I hate to say that was a different time, because domestic violence is always going to be domestic violence. There's nothing like, well, it was okay back then. But I'm talking about in terms of reality television, on Vanderpump Rules specifically, we dealt with the slap, when Stassi slapped the shit out of Kristen Doty. And we all laughed it. We still meme about it. We still all that. Of course, nowadays, we always talk that would not fly on Bravo today. They would not be able to show that today, and most likely they would have been fired, when we've seen other situations on Bravo that have gotten to a physical part, or even a sexually aggressive part, just like a below deck. A couple of, was that last season or the season before, with Aisha and that the gentleman that worked on the crew, and it was a really unsafe situation, and they dealt with it pretty swiftly. But Vanderpump Rules, there was always this charged up energy. And I think the audience, part of the reason this show is beloved, is that you're like, oh, these are all drunk idiots, and they're young, and they're drunk, and they're living their lives. And I think a lot of us said, okay, this guy has put away the booze. I've said this many times on the show. He's consistently worked at the DJing. It seemed like in these last couple of years, he was starting to keep his head down, keep himself straight. And I was like, look at him. He's succeeding immensely because of him cleaning up his act. And I think we all might have speculated like he was genuinely working on his behavior because he loved Allie and he knew there was so much to lose and he was dealing with his own hurt. And we can only speculate, and I'm not looking to prop this man up in any way, but we've seen his family history. We've seen his dad on the show. We've seen his mom on the show. We've seen his brother on the show. And yes, another podcast or you guys can talk about like how much he obviously is responsible for his family and whatever pressure. It still doesn't excuse laying your hands on somebody else, especially a woman. There's just nothing that can excuse that. And especially if you have tangible evidence, if somebody is fully coming forward or the police are involved and they have determined this, which it seems like they have done. Now, the report does not indicate if this was Allie or not, but it's in Burbank. Their house is in Burbank. They were at Kathy Hilton's party right before that. And so if you put two and two together, I would imagine or I would assume that it is Allie. We'll talk more about that. So back to Kathy Hilton's night of party. Yeah, I saw him a lot that night. And what I said on the Patreon, and I didn't say this in a, hey, like he just seemed really up. And it felt like Red Bull. Like he just seemed like he was kind of bouncing around. And I was talking to my friend Lauren Herbert, who works for Access Hollywood, who I think is coming on the show soon. And we were talking, and he was talking to her, and he was like, oh, I really respect you as a reporter, but it was just something. He was kind of being rude to her, but in a James Kennedy kind of way. And that's that thing is that we're so used to them as characters that it was like we kind of laughed about it afterwards because like I've got to go, very important. And I heard him mention something about his DJ residency because remember he is now touring with Pauly D. From Jersey Shore. He had his Vegas residency. He has dates everywhere. In fact, he was just advertising a date yesterday. I think maybe it was Dallas or something. You can see that on his Instagram. And I wasn't like, oh, is this guy drinking? Because I was like watching Lisa Barlow sing Last Christmas with Kathy Hilton. I wasn't like, oh, let's see if this guy's, I just wasn't doing that. And I just thought, oh, there's James just bopping around. I wasn't like, let's get a picture. None of that information. Now, Nick Viall was there as well. And he had Michael Rappaport on his podcast today. And I believe I saw a clip, and I believe what they were talking about is that Nick saw something that, not even his wife saw, but he saw where he was had a friend with him. And how I took the story to say is that James had a drink in his hand and he like turned on his friend and said, hold this, and was like just snapped at his friend. And then in the clip, Michael Rappaport's like, that's DJ James Kennedy. That's what we want to see, being the boss. So almost like he was like turning down a drink, or that's how I took it to mean. Or they were kind of celebrating him and his journey and saying, wow, like this guy, he's potentially always going to be rude, but at least he's on the right path. Obviously, that is not the case, and obviously that story now takes on a different light of whatever Nick saw. Now, Nick, like I said, he's the one that he caught that on a moment that nobody else caught. I will say, though, I was texting with Mercedes Javid today, and we were talking because she was at the Kathy Hilton party as well. And I was texting with her today and she said, well, I saw him mouthing off at the valet walking up the hill and Allie was alone walking. And I was like, well, was he yelling at the valet? And she said, no, he was like hollering at the sky. And she just thought it was like, I think we all just kind of thought it was weird. I've seen James Kennedy when he's been shit canned. Like I've seen it a couple of times way back in the day when it was like, oh, this guy's gone. And we saw that season after season. There were so many. I mean, remember the gay pride episode? Remember his old friend Logan I believe, N-O-H? Remember they were speculating that there was like something going on between him and Logan. And then Logan, I believe, at some point allegedly accused him, DJ James Kennedy, of hitting him, if I'm not mistaken, not on the show, but off the show. But there was always this, were they having an intimate relationship? There was a lot of things about James cheating. This was when he was with Rachel Leviss. So you had all of these stories, and you saw this dude that when he would drink, he completely turned. He would say insane things to Katie Maloney a bunch of times. I mean, Lala in that one season when they were like that, I would think it was the premiere episode of one of the seasons where they were at Sky Bar and DJ James Kennedy and Lala just like went in on all of them. And that was like working on your summer body, Katie. And it was just so, I see some of us haven't been working on our summer body or something like that. It was really, really nasty. Um, and we saw this guy, what I thought, and I think a lot of us thought, we saw this guy grow, right? We saw this guy grow. Um, and it does not seem to be that is the case. Now, a lot of people are like, well, Allie was posting yesterday, Wednesday. Allie was posting yesterday. She went to an event. She was taking pictures. It's all over her social media and her stories from yesterday. And she went with her friend, my friend Zachary Reality. He's been on the show before, and I think he's a really talented guy, very big on TikTok. And I know he's been Allie's friend for a long time. In fact, when he came on, the time I think we were talking about the night Allie and James Kennedy met at that concert because Zachary was with her. So people are like, well, it might not be her because she was there at that event the next day. Now, if somebody deals with a cycle of physical abuse or mental abuse, they've learned to conceal things pretty well. Now, I do believe that if this is Allie, there might be a world in which she was contracted to do that holiday event because remember, people get paid to be at these things. People make a lot of money at the holidays for doing these events and showing up. And I'm just speculating, but she might have thought this is not going to hit the news for another couple of days. I'm contracted to do this. I got to go do this, right? Or there's a possibility that it wasn't Allie at all. That it was one of their friends. We don't know. I mean, conventional wisdom, I think, would say that it was Allie, but we don't know yet. I'm sure more will come out, right? So she went to that event. James Kennedy just posted, I think, maybe yesterday or the day before about one of his upcoming shows next year. Of course, I would think this would put a lot of his work and his jobs in jeopardy. I would imagine that seems to be the case with a lot of these things. Now, not with all. I mean, there's been a lot of accusations of abuse or people being canceled that are still able to go out there and be more successful than they've ever been before. Morgan Wallen's had accusations, not domestic violence, but, he's had accusations. Zach Bryan, most recently, he's still selling out, not arenas, he's selling out stadiums. But I don't think I think it's a little different with James Kennedy because it's a reality TV star and also his life has been on display for so many seasons on this show and we're well aware of the struggles that he has gone through. Okay, so we have not gotten word yet from James Kennedy at all. But we do have another story that TMZ put out just a couple of hours ago with further information about this story and about Doty, Kristen Doty, who is going to be on this second season of The Valley coming up, and Rachel Leviss. I call her the artist formerly known as Raquel. Oh, wow. And they actually just put up a new TMZ article right here while we've been speaking. It says, James Kennedy's girlfriend seen for first time following his domestic violence arrest. Allie Luber, girlfriend of more than 2 years, has emerged amid the news of Vanderpump Rules star domestic violence arrest. The astrologer, who has appeared on VPR alongside the DJ, was spotted outside the home she shares with James in Burbank, California. And remember, Burbank police are the people that went to the scene after they got the report. I think people are speculating a neighbor might have witnessed this or heard this. In the picture taken today, it looks like she, or TMZ describes her as looking seemingly unbothered, despite the recent controversy involving her boyfriend. It says, check it out. Allie stepped out in front of her house on Thursday, mere hours after TMZ broke the news. And she does look unbothered. But guys, once again, this is a very delicate situation. And, putting on a brave face is what a lot of people do in this world. A picture sometimes will tell, it'll sometimes say 1,000 words and sometimes it says nothing. Sometimes pictures lie to us. So, obviously the paparazzi is out. The paparazzi stalked out Sandoval and Ariana's house for, I think, a full year at some point during Scandoval. And they were always out there. So we still have yet to have a statement from Allie either. But we do have some comments from Doty and people representing Rachel Leviss. This is another TMZ story. And it is pointing out that after the story broke, his ex-girlfriend, Kristen Doty, addressed the news head-on in her Instagram stories. Her Instagram stories took the TMZ report and she put it in her stories, and in the bottom right, she wrote, "Finally, period." Finally, period. So I think that says a lot. Now, remember, Kristen is pregnant right now, her and her fiance, Luke Broderick. But, you know, it doesn't take a lot of digging to find out things that Kristen has hinted at, or like we've seen examples of on the actual TV show, or she's talked about on her podcast with Luke, Balancing Act, or that we've even kind of danced around when I've had conversations with her on this show or on her podcast when I've guested on. And I think Kristen will speak about her specific experiences when she is able. Of course, she is pregnant. I think obviously this is so upsetting, but it's upsetting whatever he did to her. These things leave scars for lifetimes, obviously. But I will be very interested to hear her story in her own words, because she obviously has one. James and Kristen dated between 2013 and 2015. TMZ reports that the bulk of their relationship played out on Vanderpump Rules, and obviously had a contentious relationship with a lot of explosive arguments. Now, James's former fiancée, Rachel Raquel Leviss, has now also weighed in on the arrest via her attorneys. Her attorneys are Mark Garagos and Brian Friedman. Mark Garagos obviously has represented a lot of big people. Most recently, he is involved with the Menendez brothers and their fight for freedom. But you also might know their names. I've done a lot of reporting on them this past year because they are the lawyers representing Bethany Frankel in the Reality Reckoning. Whatever is happening in the Reality Reckoning. These are also the same lawyers that were representing Brandi Glanville and then told her recently that she doesn't have a case, and now she says she has a parasite in her face that's cost her $70,000. Anyways, these gentlemen are well entrenched in Bravo and trying to prove. We still don't know exactly what they want. You know, I'm all for better mental health care, taking care of people in the right way, paying people overtime if necessary. But it's very murky in what Bethany wants to do with the Reality Reckoning. Now, interesting side note, Love is Blind, the show on Netflix, we had Nick Thompson on over a year ago. He was on one of the first seasons of Love is Blind, right? And just yesterday, New York Times did an article saying that the Labor Board classifies Love is Blind contestants as employees. The National Labor Relations Board case against the Netflix hit could have ripple effects across reality TV industry. Now, Nick, when he was on this show, he talked about this and talked about like the behavior of the producers on this, very popular Netflix series, and said, the contracts that they signed, it makes them, they're not even considered employees. So they can't get mental health care. They can't be taken care of. So there was these complaints. And so this is a big ruling that the Labor Board now classifies contestants as employees, which means better rights. And I thought Nick Thompson, and like I said on our interview over a year ago, they were going about this in the right way. And they were really saying, this is what we specifically want. We want better mental health care for reality stars. Where Bethany's, to me, it just seemed a lot of pomp and circumstance in a way. And it seemed like Bethany had a bone to pick with Andy Cohen in a lot of ways. And it just seemed like it felt very attention seeking at times with Bethany. And I don't feel out of line or out of pocket saying that, because I think a lot with Bethany is attention seeking. I mean, what I'm doing right now is attention seeking. So with Bethany, though, she has kind of made an art form of it. So anyways, Mark Garagos and Brian Friedman are the people representing Bethany. They represent Rachel. They represent a slew of Bravo celebrities. So they put out a statement today and says, this news is unfortunately not surprising. Rachel's lawsuit describes in significant detail Mr. Kennedy's long history of erratic, violent behavior and substance abuse. As they continued, the attorneys called out NBC and Evolution, that's the production company that produces Vanderpump Rules, or produced for Vanderpump Rules, and who said that they knew about Kennedy's troubling behavior all along. there was, gosh, the story has, by the way, the story has been updated because they took out a couple of sentences, I believe, from when I first read this story. Hold on one sec. They changed this story. One sec. Okay, I found the information in another article in Variety or Variety.com by Kate Arthur and Jordan Moreau. And they put a lot of this information in there as well, but I found the quote I was looking for. The statement pointed the finger at Bravo, NBC, and Evolution, the production company that makes Vanderpump Rules. They say, we are aware of James Kennedy's recent arrest for domestic violence. This news is unfortunately not surprising. We read this part already. Mr. Kennedy's long history of erratic violent behavior and substance abuse. Just as troubling, however, is that NBC and Evolution, who have known about Mr. Kennedy's troubling behavior all along, have been engaged in a multi-year cover-up on his behalf. They too bear responsibility. So Mark Garagos and Brian Friedman saying, we are aware of this, and also saying, look, Bravo and Evolution, they've protected this man. They've known about this behavior. So this is kind of, I mean, this is a horrible thing that has happened, but they are going to potentially use it for their benefit. Also, remember, they are also in an active lawsuit. We just covered this the other day, that Tom Sandoval is going to be potentially representing himself against the case against the video of Rachel Leviss, that she is suing Ariana and Tom Sandoval. Now, in other news, though, Tom Sandoval, I did a whole thing on him representing himself. How that's going to work? Now, I forgot what account. Maybe it was Vanderpod Recaps. I'm not sure, and I'm sorry if I'm incorrect. I'm sorry if I'm misquoting who I saw, where I saw this. But Victoria Lee Robinson, Tom Sandoval's girlfriend, made or commented on some post in regards to this and says Tom is not representing himself. He's just going with another lawyer in regards to this. So allegedly, Victoria Lee Robinson, his girlfriend, says that him representing himself is not the case. So now it brings up this other question of how much did Bravo and Evolution know? Remember, the Sandoval and Ariana video, that whole scenario with the video took place after they had wrapped filming. Remember, they pulled backup cameras later that week when Ariana reached out to production and said, this is going on. You want to know? This is going on. They were not filming. The season had already been done. This was off season. So in that sense, I've always had a hard time saying, well, how is Bravo and Evolution responsible for that night at Tom Tom when Ariana discovered this video when cameras weren't up yet? Nothing, this was not a storyline. This was actually their real life. And then it's hard to blame Bravo for that. But just like with patterns of behavior that we're finding with James Kennedy in his past, with Rachel and Kristen and potentially Ali Luber, they're saying there's a pattern of behavior with Bravo and Evolution. Now we don't know, right? We don't know exactly what that story is. Also, there was a friend with James Kennedy that I think Nick Viall was talking about, and he looked like it was like an albino. It was very pale skin, like almost albino. I think it was a gentleman. I mean, had kind of weird hair, and I think it was James Kennedy's friend, and said, I think this is who he was like snapping at in the Nick Viall story. I do not know this person's name, and I'm sorry if I'm misgendering this person as well. It was a very interesting looking person. So the other part of this, and this is also going to be their story to speak about when they are ready. But Jamie Lynn from the podcast Jamie All Over, I've had her on this show before. I've been on her show before, and she's taken a break from podcasting a little bit over the last year. And my head has been up my ass a lot in this last couple of years with everything. And I kind of just work every day, just kind of keep my head down and work. But she had always alluded to something with James Kennedy and something that really kind of irked her. Now I've spoken with, or I've been texting with Jamie today, and I don't know, something might, it's got to be when people are ready to speak about what they know. But we can read what her Instagram stories are. So I can read that to you directly. So Jamie says, I don't even want to show his face, because she had reposted the TMZ story. And she wrote over it, I don't even want to show his face, but this is why I had to distance myself from so many people who stuck by him, posted with him, supported his shows, because we were all given the same information that goes way beyond this report. It's also why I had a hard time podcasting, as I was scared to say too much, but also disappointed in myself for self-censoring to protect friends' jobs. Now remember, Jamie also used to be one of Sheena's co-hosts on Shenanigans back in the day. And I think they are still friends or friendly. She continues, I never wanted to be the reason a show got canceled or friends lost jobs. But now that the show is done with that cast, I feel I can say more. Ethically, as a fierce supporter of domestic violence victims and a survivor myself, I tried to teach other women around this that it was not okay to bring an abuser around the very woman he abused. I also had conversations with NBC Universal and Bravo producers about how this abuser should not have a platform. It sickened me to see so many women unknowingly supporting him. I hope this will change the minds of those who gave him the benefit of the doubt and wrote the multiple women off as not reliable. Always believe the victims. I hope this is rock bottom for him and he gets the help he needs. I hope his victims who chose not to say something in order to get more TV time realize they put other people in harm. And I hope the one woman who has been carrying this trauma for years while friends still bring him around will be vindicated and share her story. I would assume, even if I had not talked to Jamie at all, I would assume that she is referring to Kristen Doty. She continues in the next slide. No, it wasn't okay to have him DJ your birthday party after you knew. No, it didn't matter if it was years ago or if drinking was involved. No, it didn't matter if he was funny or charming. No, it wasn't okay to headline him after you knew just because he could bring in crowds. No, it wasn't okay to post a photo with him the day after you said, now I know this, I will have a hard time filming. Now I know this, I'll have a hard time filming with him. No, the victims were not at fault, crazy, and did not provoke it. No, it was not okay to support his shows and document it after you knew. No, it was not okay to put money above ethics. And then in the next slide, which is very damning, it says, and production knew years ago. And then she then had another slide when Kristen Doty spoke out saying, finally, she wrote, in case you didn't already know, I 100% support and believe Kristen Doty. She deserved so much better from so many people around her, and I will always have her back and always be an ally. So that was from Jamie Lynn All Over is her IG account. Her podcast is Jamie All Over. Another person that was involved in that group is a gentleman named Brett Kenyon. He worked at TomTom. He's a singer-songwriter as well. And he has reached out as well because he says he has a lot of information. He might, I just had to interview an amazing BBC director and producer of this upcoming show that it will blow you away, you guys. It was just this beautiful. Anyways, I had to do this, and he was texting me, and I said, I'm so sorry, I can't. I just was DMing or texting with Jamie, and then Brett had reached out, and when people are ready to tell their story, they will. And when Kristen is ready to tell her story, she will. Like I said, we can all kind of just put these pieces together. We're sometimes not the most delicate fan base in terms of this. It's like, we'll completely turn on you. Or the Sandoval and the Scandoval of it all, it was just, he was such a fucking idiot. And you saw how many, men on Bravo, we just talked about Southern Charm, about God, James Kennedy should go on like an ayahuasca trip. That's what we're headed towards. But hopefully he'll actually get real fucking help. Hopefully, like this obviously is a problem. We can't say that this man has grown if there are still if police are involved, if he's abusing another woman, and then more women are coming forward with their stories in terms of physical abuse. So that's a lot of the information that we have now. There's also been, you can look at this or hear this, two T's in a pod, Tamra and Teddy Mellencamp. They had an interaction with James Kennedy and Allie a long time. I forgot, I think it was after an award show. They were sharing a SUV to Tom Tom. This was when James was still drinking. And Teddy said that they're like that James did some insane shit. Because remember, Teddy had then told Lisa at Tom Tom that James was not behaving himself. And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, Lindsay Hubbard from Summer House was in town, because I think it was like the MTV TV Awards or something, if I'm not mistaken. And so they were all there. And I think even Lindsay was there. But whatever happened in this SUV was pretty intense, and I think freaked out Tamra and Teddy. And they've spoken about it on their podcast, which you can go look up. This was, over a year ago, maybe 2 years at this point. And Allie was there for that. Now, I know a little bit more about this, but that's not my story to tell. And I think people will tell those things when the time is right. You think about Lala, who had just celebrated, I believe, her seventh year in sobriety, and her and James used to egg each other on back when they were both drinking. I'm sure she has a lot of stories through the years. And, I think at this point, we're waiting for his statement. I think it's just so different than Scandival, because at the end of the day, moralistically, obviously huge failures. We all have huge failures at a point, but when you actually lay your hands on another person, and especially a woman, if you are a man, this dude's in his 30s and has everything going for him. But that's why I say these stories really aren't aspirational. Reality TV isn't really aspirational. I think a lot of us, that was like the smoke and mirrors of it, of these big lives that we would never possibly lead, but we got to peek behind the curtain, is that if you are fucked up from childhood, that shit's going to stay with you. It doesn't matter how much money you have, doesn't matter how successful you are. Obviously, this dude is self-medicated to deal with whatever is going on inside of his head. And, that stuff never goes away unless you get real help. And that's why, we poke fun at, or, people like Jax, or, the Reiki and the ayahuasca. And it's like, Jax doing a mental health podcast now, or even Rachel doing a mental health podcast when they're still trying to figure out their own brain. It's hard to give people advice when you're figuring things out for yourself. It's really hard. And this is like hard work. This is heavy lifting. It's real fucking hard. But guess what? The women that he allegedly abused, that's harder work, because that shit is not something that they signed up for, no matter what anybody says. And they have to deal with that for the rest of their lives. And, people said that like Christian must, oh God, the joy Christian must feel right now. No, I don't think that at all. I think it's a nightmare. I think it's a continuing nightmare to have this over your head, to have this stain, of this person that did this to you. And, if you take those DMs as meaning what I think they mean, is a lot of people didn't believe her, and a lot of people didn't support her and wrote her off as, oh, that's just crazy Christian, or that's that, or that's that. Two things can be true at once. Somebody can have their own issues, but also have something happen to them that is completely out of their control and not their fault at all. Just because somebody might be wild in certain situations doesn't mean like, well, they deserve a smack. They deserve to be strangled potentially. Like, no, that's not how that works. It's just not. Nobody is perfect, but there are levels of things, and domestic violence, obviously. I've been talking about this phenomenon that we all go through. I was talking about Joe Francis last week, because they had that Girls Gone Wild documentary on Peacock. And, I said, isn't it interesting that I lived through this? And we all kind of thought of Girls Gone Wild. We were all kind of joking about it. Like, oh, that's the late night infomercial where the girls are taking their tops off and like, at Mardi Gras and like spring break. And then you realize the real insane depravity of Joe Francis and everything, and these women and what they had gone through and how it affects them 20 years later. And you're just like, wow, you don't think about those things. You just kind of like think about it. Oh, yeah, remember when he hung out with Ashton Kutcher and they wore all those stupid trucker hats with Girls Gone Wild on them. Like that's the thing. Like that's how you remember it. And then you were like, oh shit, it was actually this. We sometimes have this amnesia to things. Or like you check it out, oh, it's a reality. Those crazy kids, they're just fucked up. That's crazy. But no, this is actually crazy. This is actually crazy. And it's that, it's not that, I think at a certain point after you get over your anger with something or some situation, I do want to believe that, like I said at the start of this, that you do want people to change, or you do, I don't know if rooting for them is the right word, but I think we were also excited that James Kennedy was one of the only people that could really like nail Sandoval to the wall in that scene and say, you did this, and call it out for what it was. And in some ways, I said at the time, the Bravo audiences, myself included, we have the shortest short-term memory ever. So it almost kind of like baptized James as like he's the only good man on Vanderpump Rules by default. Like it was like like in what world did we ever think James Kennedy would become the one that you're like that guy? But we look for heroes. I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. It can be very painful to the victims, but that's something we want to believe in, right? We want to believe that there are people to look up to. Men and women, we want those things. And it's, I always say, obviously two things can be true at once and everything is not black and white. There is so much gray area. If this turns out to be true, and if this is Allie, my God, I hope all of the friends around Allie, including her family, and I would imagine Allie, because Allie seems really damn strong. But Allie also seems like somebody that genuinely loves very deeply and probably loves this man very deeply. But I would think that, or I would hope that this would be the final straw, and so James can start doing the heavy work that he needs to be doing, so he doesn't wind up in jail. And I think it's not that the rooting thing; it's just that you're like you just hope people find the right path at a certain point. You hope that you hope that for yourself, you hope that for other people as well. So there's nothing funny about this. Like with Scandival, you could almost, there was like little, because it just felt like, oh my God, this guy's burying himself with how he's speaking about this. And with this situation with James, there's nothing. There's nothing that is humorous. Because then you go back into the past and you're like, okay, this was there, obviously. This was there. And people were talking about this. And there was a time that I thought more was going to come out. And I don't know in terms of cover up, but I think if you are genuinely friends with people, you excuse sometimes friends' behavior. Now, I don't know if any of the cast has ever seen him with their own eyes be physically abusive. I don't know that. And I hope if they did know or they did see that with their own eyes, this would be a completely different story. But if you're going on rumors and speculation, it's hard, I would imagine, especially in that group of people, because everybody in that group of people has been guilty of something. I'm not saying of that degree. No, not of that degree, but guilty of something. Guilty of something. And so I think there was a long leash in that group. And, I think even the cast was rooting for him at a certain point. So that is all the news that we have right now on the story about James Kennedy. Let me do just a quick update on the Google search and see if anything has come in the last 20 minutes. I would imagine we will get a statement from James Kennedy at some point. I would imagine we would also get some of these DJ dates taken off the calendar for certain venues. I mean, this man just headlined Electric Daisy, well, no, not EDC, Neon Carnival, which is like the big party that Brett Bolthouse throws every year at Coachella. Remember he performed with Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce were there. He did a remix of one of her songs and she enjoyed it. And I thought everybody, I was like, wow, man, like, wow. There's a lot of things that we are constantly reminded of in life. And I think this is another example of one of those things. I think it's interesting. We are a rabid fan base, so sometimes we will go after everybody and everything with the same kind of fervor. We still don't have there's still going to be more information on this. I don't know. I don't know what can explain this away. And, if anything, it just brings up this larger conversation of his past behavior that has been kind of peeking around corners or really right in front of our faces for all of this times. I will end with my own personal stories about James Kennedy I've said this on the podcast, I think the first year I was doing this, but it was like I said, I think like 7 years ago, maybe 2017-ish, 2017, 2018, in that when he would DJ at Sir. And if I'm not mistaken, it's a little blurry, but I think it might have been after Countess Luann's first cabaret show she did in Los Angeles, which was like this jazz, I think the Catalina Jazz Club, which was like this underground basement venue. And Ronnie was there, and Danny and Annabelle, all of these podcasters. And then everybody went to Sir afterwards. And I think it was that night. If not, I mean, I frequented Sir a lot back then. So I remember going up to James Kennedy, and I have this selfie of me. I've posted this many times where I'm like, but he was hammered. He was hammered, and he was like visibly hammered. I knew he was hammered. Anybody, like, he was spitting, and I went up to him to get a selfie, and he said, I know you. You're that producer. And I was like, no, I'm not a producer at all. Yeah, I'm like, I know, I swear, I wish, And then I was like, oh my God, does he think I look like Randall Emmett? Even though I'm not sure if Randall Emmett was in the picture at that time. But I mean, I just remember going, oh my God. He goes, you're over there kissing that girl. And I wasn't. I was like, no, I'm with these guys over here. But I was like, okay. And then he was like, do you have any blow? And I was like, no, I do. He goes, I know you do. And I was like, no, I don't. I swear I don't. And he's like, you do. I know you. And I was like, and it was such an inebriated conversation that I kind of just LOL'd about it. I was like, LOL. I mean, and then, he was like, I don't know. I don't want to keep excusing, but it was, everybody goes through something or some kind of lost year or two or a decade of their lives where they overindulge in everything. And I just thought it was what an interesting, stupid little funny experience. And he seemed almost blackout while spinning. And and then there was another time I remember that I was outside. I was still, I think, smoking cigarettes. There was like a year where I picked back up smoking cigarettes. I was outside smoking, and he was outside smoking. And I said, oh my God, Top Man, his song Top Man, that I unironically love. I said, Top Man is a really great song. And he just sat there quietly, and then he was like, it really is. It really is. And you could just tell he was like buzzed, and he was a little teetering. And that was it. But I'd seen him but I've also seen him completely sober before. And he always kind of has this British, not snot, but like a British humor and a British coldness. It's very humorous though with him. So you're like, LOL. Like even at the party the other night when with Lauren, he kind of said something rude. It was like, LOL, that's James Kennedy. I wasn't like, that dude's hammered. I just thought he was like really up. And I keep saying that because I just thought, oh, this dude's like cranking Red Bull. Like I really did. Cause I'll be the first to tell you like, oh, that person was on this, or, when I saw Shep at BravoCon, I was literally like, oh, I bet that dude's on mushrooms right now. Like that when I saw him at the Bravos, I was like, that dude's gone. But I just thought like, I know they all like to dabble in mushrooms and stuff like that. So I was like, oh, that guy's on mushrooms. I didn't really think. And then he had like an insane weekend after that Friday I saw him. So, but last, when I saw him on Tuesday, I wasn't like, oh, that dude is on blow. I did not think that at all. I just thought, but also I was like so stunned to see I was stunned to see Mary Cosby there and Bronwyn and Whitney. And like, I mean, that's who I was like talking with. I mean, I've been around James Kennedy so much that I just wasn't going like, is he drinking? What's going on? But obviously whatever happened that night really got bad after they got back at home. And I'm not saying I would hope that he was drinking, but I hope there is some sort of substance involved. I don't want any, obviously it's never an excuse to hit somebody, but you do want to think that something is a trigger, that he is not cold stone sober and he is abusing somebody with his hands or his fists. That, and by the way, a lot of people do that. So, me talking this out right now, spur of the moment, you even see how I have these things built up of trying to make excuses for somebody else's behavior. Of like, oh, he's got to be wasted. He's got to be this. And I don't know when you get arrested if they do any kind of toxicology reports. I don't know if they do test you for, I don't know if you're arrested for DV, if they have to do a sobriety test or any of that. So I'm not sure how that all works. You guys might know that a little bit more, and I'll try to find out a little bit more information about that. But that is all the news we know now. I'm sure there will be more news. Obviously, this was going to be a Real Housewives of Salt Lake City recap, which I was going to be like, hey, I'll put these together. And I'm like, no, Salt Lake City is so bizarre. I want to try to make, myself laugh and maybe make you guys roll your eyes at me a little bit. So that's going to be a whole separate show that'll come out tomorrow. Let's see, to close out, I know Maritza had a couple of other Vanderpump stories that she wrote down for me to potentially talk about. And I know it's just one of those kind of bummers. After you talk about something like that, it's really hard to talk about anything else because that is just such a serious topic. And that night at Kathy's, so in terms of Vanderpump Rules, Sheena, I think, was in Hawaii. Lala wasn't there. Sandoval, Schwartz, they weren't there. You had a lot of cast members from the Valley. You had Brittany there. You had Janet and her husband, Jason. You had Michelle Lally. You had Jesse Lally. So the Valley cast was all there. We did Tom Sandoval potentially representing himself. This, I guess, is a little good news. Katie Maloney has made it Instagram official with her boyfriend. And she posted a photo of him on IG the other day. IG official with her boyfriend, Nick Martin. She wrote, "Happy birthday, my love." She put the heart emoji and she has 4 or 5 exclamation points. Where are they at? Are they at Casa Vega? Or El Compadre? Where is this at? Anyways, on December 10th, she made a relationship with Nick Martin official to celebrate his birthday. She posted a photo of the two staring into each other's eyes at dinner. Oh, they were at Casa Vega. Martin reposted the sweet snap on his own Instagram stories, writing, "Our Casa Vega Xmas card," referring to the name of the Los Angeles restaurant, which is also known as a favorite of the Kardashian family. It's right on Ventura Boulevard. In fact, there's a season of Flipping Out where one of Jeff Lewis's projects is doing the entryway to Casa Vega. Casa Vega has been there forever. It's truly a really, I love that restaurant. I like El Compadre as well, but that's a great one. Kristen Doute had a gender reveal the other day or the other weekend that Brittany Cartwright threw for her. So it's great that so many good things are happening for Kristen Doute and so many exciting things that she always wanted for her life. I think that truly is amazing. So she revealed the gender of her first child with Luke Broderick. And it turns out they are going to have a baby girl. And a lot of people joined this, friends and family, on a Zoom. But you had Zach from the Valley, Nia, and Danny. They said Danny Broco. It's Danny Bucco, I believe, in attendance. And Kristen said that Luke was made to be a girl dad. And this just seems really happy. You want as much happiness, I would imagine, if you're having a child. Hopefully it's one of the most joyous times in your life. So I think that's truly amazing. And that is it, folks. That is Vanderpump Rules. Now, it is wild, that we are in a place where Vanderpump Rules is not picking up with the OG cast for season 12. They have recast, or they are recasting with all OG cast members besides Peter Madrigal and Lisa and Ken. I think it's another example of, it's probably time that this show is over. You would have storylines. I said jokingly yesterday it would have been really funny to watch Sandoval represent himself. But then you would have to also watch this. And I think this is just really harmful. And maybe it's time for James Kennedy and Sandoval as well to be away from TV for a while to figure things out and try to put their best foot forward. And especially in James' case, to never physically lay their hands on somebody again. I think this is the tip of the iceberg as well. I think a lot of people will potentially come out with more stories or more specifics about these stories. So I'm sure you will be seeing a lot of this pop up again and again over these next couple of weeks. It's easy for a lot of us to be up on this hill and go, "You blew it, dude." But you kind of did blow it in some ways. And I hope he is very cognizant of that at this point. And I hope he gets the help he needs. And I hope especially Allie, who seems like such a light and such a beautiful person inside and out. She looked so beautiful at the Kathy Hilton party the other night that I hope she has the people around her to help her with whatever she is going through and whatever she has gone through and whatever she will be going through. Because the Bravo audience and paparazzi and all of that stuff, we've seen it time and time again, can be very, very intense, especially when you are going through something. Now, even remember Ariana, pre-Ariana having this amazing Broadway run in Love Island. Remember seeing those paparazzi photos of people and her with the middle finger, and like just imagine what she was going through at that time before all of these opportunities started to happen. So we hope the same opportunities for Allie and whatever she wants to do from this point forward. Okay, you guys, there'll be a Salt Lake City recap tomorrow or today, whenever this comes out as well. So please check that out, download that. I promise there will be some laughs in there. Bye.